The Jewish Story Podcast, number 4. Spielberg's Lack of Imagination. It was reported by the USC Shoah Foundation on December 9th, 2023, that the film director Steven Spielberg had made his first public response to October 7th and its aftermath. He said, "I never imagined I would see such unspeakable barbarity against Jews in my lifetime." This response came sometime after David Schachter from the Holocaust Survivors Foundation USA had sent Spielberg a letter saying, "I, along with countless other survivors, are heartbroken that since October 7th, 2023, you have not spoken out publicly and taken a stand against terrorism, against Hamas, and the millions who celebrate the shedding of Jewish blood." Two things come to mind regarding Spielberg's comment. Firstly, the speaker is clearly surprised, unaware that such barbarity still exists in the world. Secondly, that his unawareness is a function of his lack of imagination. Imagination is defined as an act or power of forming a mental image of something not present to one's senses and never before wholly perceived in reality. This is the very same Spielberg of the award-winning film Schindler's List, and the founder of the USC Shoah Center, which has been filming survivors' stories for many years all over the world. So one must assume that Spielberg thought that the Holocaust had finally put paid to barbaric pogroms against the Jews, that they were in short history. Interestingly enough, the morning that I began to write this article, I heard a story about imagination. A king had wanted to see who was a better doctor, Maimonides or a renowned non-Jewish doctor. It was decided that each doctor would make a poisonous concoction and give it to the other. Maimonides drank the other doctor's concoction and managed to overcome the side effects. The other doctor drank Maimonides' concoction and died 3 days later. The king asked Maimonides what he had given the doctor. Maimonides replied, "A glass of water." Apparently the doctor had died from an overdose of imagination. So worried had he been what was in Maimonides' concoction and how he would or would not have been able to overcome it, that his soul fled from the world. We see that imagination can be deadly, but it can also be very profitable. Spielberg, a Hollywood director, surely does not lack imagination. Indeed, one could say that he and others like him have made hundreds of millions of dollars, serving up to the public doses or injections, inverted commas, of ready-made imagination. Whilst watching the plethora of series and films coming out of Hollywood, we too can succeed and fail, love and hate, make money and go bankrupt, kill and be killed, commit crimes and be caught, or not, without moving from our armchair. We can allow our imagination to be taken for a ride on the wings of Hollywood. That is imagination as a passive, titillating pastime. Imagination, however, can also be godly. According to the great Hasidic Rebbe, Simcha Bunim from Pshischa, all existence other than that of man can only comprehend itself. But God created man who contains within himself the higher and lower world, so that he can imagine everything in his soul. This is the essence of man, that he can understand and imagine something other than himself. And this is the meaning of "let us make man in our image, in our likeness." The imagination is God's gift to human beings. Imagination enables us to understand what is implicit and unspeakable in the higher and lower worlds. It enables us to see through what is concrete and obvious and bring to life what is implicit in life, divine presence. Bringing together the concrete and the implicit, imagination transfers meaning from the known to the unknown. Imagination is also the fount of artistic creation. For Shelley, reason is the account of entities we have already known, separately and as a whole. Imagination is the discernment of the values of these entities. Reason respects differences. Imagination respects similarity of things. For Wordsworth, imagination is an influential and vibrant force. For Coleridge, imagination is an individual's transitory replication of the divinity of the world. And for Keats, imagination is an indispensable aptitude to recognize life and its magnificence. What the deadly, the godly, and creative imagination have in common is an ability to see through the concrete, the obvious, and recognize and bring to life what is implicit. When one activates the imagination, incongruities are brought together into a new congruence, a new perspective. Thus, meaning can be carried over from one place to another. A lack of imagination limits and stifles our vision. Maybe the biggest clue to understanding Spielberg's lack of imagination can be found in the writings of the Hasidic Rebbe Nachman from Breslov, regarding his understanding of an event that took place 3,000 years ago. Contemplating the world of the Jews when they were slaves in Egypt, he asked the question, why, when Moses came to tell the people of Israel that God was going to liberate them, to take them out of Egypt, they were not able to listen to the message. In Rabbi Nachman's understanding, the people were deaf and asleep, a condition brought on by hard work, suffering, and assimilation. How were they going to be woken up, according to Rabbi Nachman? By hearing stories of redemption, of hope for God. These stories of redemption had the power to heal, to free and loosen speech by seizing the imagination, to invite the telling of other narratives and worlds. Without realizing it, the stories of redemption would infiltrate the people of Israel almost unconsciously. A process of incorporation began, of making the words of God their own. The stories manifested understandings that didn't exist before. Spielberg, like no few Jews in the Western world, was deaf and asleep. Not only could he not imagine such barbarity against Jews in his lifetime, but in March 2023, he was quoted as saying he was very surprised at the rise of anti-Semitism in America. Not since Germany in the 30s have I witnessed anti-Semitism no longer lurking, but standing proud with hands on hips, like Hitler and Mussolini, kind of daring us to defy it. I've never experienced this in my entire life, especially in this country. It took Spielberg 2 months after October the 7th to wake up, and only then very partially. Did the stories of the survivors from October 7th wake him up? Did the letters from the Holocaust survivors wake him up? Did Dershowitz's despicable Obama comment wake him up from his deep sleep? Was he too suffering from hard work and tiredness, or maybe an overdose of assimilation? In the doctor's imagination, the obvious, the glass of water, had become something else, a poisonous, deadly drink. In Spielberg's mind, it seems that the opposite occurred. The anti-Semitic and genocidal machinations of Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran had been turned into a benign glass of water. For what purpose had Hamas been building for so many years an underground network of tunnels larger than the London Underground? Simply to provide employment for the local population? If that was the reality, then for sure there was no possibility of imagining anything so barbaric as October 7th, for there was no possible frame of reference. So what story of redemption can we tell in order to help wake up the deaf, asleep, and assimilated? The Hasidic rabbi Netivot Shalom told the following story. When he was a young boy, 9 years old, he lived with his family in the Ukraine during the Russian Civil War, 1917-1921. The Red Army, the White Army, and the Cossacks roamed the Ukraine, carrying out wave after wave of barbaric pogroms against Jews. One of the sides entered the town where the Netivot Shalom lived. A group of soldiers burst into his house and made everybody line up against the wall. It was clear what their fate was to be. The young boy exploited all the commotion to flee from the house without being seen. He ran to the edge of the town and found a hiding place in one of the houses. Come night, all was quiet in the town, so he decided to go home and see what had happened to his family. When he entered his house, he was very surprised to find everyone there, alive. His older brother asked him what had happened, and he told them where he had hidden. Then he asked his brother what had happened to them. His brother said that after they'd all been put up against the wall to await their expected fate, their father had asked the soldiers if he could have a glass of water. They agreed. On receiving the glass of water, he sat down at the table and with great intention said the blessing. Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, through whose word everything came to be. And of course, when the father made the blessing, he was not just thinking about the water, but about everything else that was going on in his life at that very time. His entire family standing up against the wall, waiting to be killed at any moment. Immediately after he drank the water, suddenly sounds of horses galloping, shots and screaming were heard. Another army had arrived in town. The soldiers immediately left the house at great speed. Nobody was harmed. The Nishtivot Shalom and his family knew very well what was real, yet another barbaric pogrom. And they also knew what was possible, saying a blessing at a time when their lives were on the line, recognizing God's presence in everything in this world. They weren't deaf, asleep, or assimilated. They did not lack imagination.